Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trailokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva Vedyat Ravinam, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Yata sarvani bhutani pratibhanti stitani cha yatraivo pashamam yanti tasmai satyatmane namaha. So we are in the story of Suchi, the story of Karkati. And just to review, there was a demoness, a Rakshasi, named Karkati, who lived in the area of the Himalayas. And she ate people. That was her thing. She could never get enough of them. So she did tapas to propitiate Brahma. And he says, okay, you want to eat more? We will give you a subtle form. So she becomes Suchi, which means a needle or a piercer. And she becomes the disease Visuchika, which is perhaps cholera. So for thousands and thousands of years, she's consuming people in the form of this disease. And for millions of people. So why are we telling this story? So she's not some pure Brahmin who goes off to Sringeri Mutt as a child and is raised very purely. She's a pig. She is the hedonist in the world. I don't know about you, but I can identify with her a lot more than, say, Nachiketas in Kathopanishad. And her consumption of these millions of people for thousands of years is you and me, as we keep going after the world. More sex, more food, more money, more cars, more trips, more stuff. Whatever it is, greed, more. What's your drug of choice, Jim? I'm a more fiend. I just want more. So that's our gal Karkati. So finally, she begins to see it never fills me up. The more I get, the more I want. The more I get, the more I want. More. Always this hunger, this hunger. So she begins to question, and she does tapas again, inquires into the nature of who am I, what is this world, where can one find peace, and she obtains self-realization. Mind you, once again, the precondition for her realization is mature vairagya. Mature vairagya, mature detachment, dispassion is not the result of willpower. It's the result of insight. She has eyes wide open and she sees what the world is capable of producing. So her mind stops. She goes into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And afterwards, she returns from Samadhi. Mind returns. And very importantly, she does not leave her Swadharma. She's a Rakshasi. Food for her tribe is human flesh. She wants a nice thigh for lunch. So she's there in the forest. What's she going to do? How does this, being a demon, wanting to eat human flesh, how does she reconcile with that? You know, we have all these teachings of ahimsa, non-injury. Be a vegetarian. Don't eat meat. Not only don't eat meat, please don't eat people. How do we reconcile all this? So she's there in the forest. She's waiting for lunch to come by. This king and his ministers come into the forest. And she roars with a big voice. And she's going to ask questions. That's where we left our story. Ganesh, do you think you can imitate a roaring Rakshasi? So will you read for us? Anybody know what verse we're on?
Page 48, verse 20.
Page 48, verse 20.
It's section 2, I believe.
Kau bhavantau idanim me khyaharatham samagato ekopayena matparshvat balakau uttarishyatha matprashna panjaram saram chet vidarayatho dhiya kathyatam iti Rajnyokta sa prichan rakshasi tada. Who are you two who have indeed arrived now for the sake of my taking food? Only by a particular stratagem you children will pass out of my vicinity. You tear asunder by your intellect, if there is strength, the cage of my questions. Let it be communicated. Thus told by the king, the demoness then asked as follows.
So she says, the only way you're going to pass through the forest is to answer my riddles. This is like the opera, what is it, Turandot, where she says, answer these questions or your head gets chopped off. This one, answer my questions or your lunch. And the king and the minister say, ask away. Let's see what happens.
Suchyovacha ekasyanekasanghyasya kasyano ambudhutheriva antar brahmanda lakshani liyante budbuda iva. Who is that atomic entity who is one but enumerated variously, into whom millions of worlds are dissolved just as bubbles in the ocean?
So what a riddle. The very small, yet many, yet vast enough that universes are like bubbles in the ocean. What entity, what being, not what thing. Very interesting question. Going on.
Kimakasham anakasham na kinchit kinchideva kim gachanna gacchati chakkaha ko tishtanneva tishtati. Which sky is not a sky, which though not something is only something, who though going does not go, who exists though not existing.
Yes. What space, Akash, is not a space or sky, either one. What is it that moves and does not move? Going on.
Kaschet tanopi pashanah kaschava pyomani chitrakrit anau jaganti tishtanti kasmin bija ivadrumaha. Who though a conscious being is a stone, who paints pictures in the sky, in which atom the worlds exist, just as a tree in a seed.
So a conscious being is vijnana ghanam, a homogeneous mass, like a stone, solid and dense. And yet all these worlds are in it. Going on.
Kasman nacha prithak kinchit dvaitam apya prithak kutaha. What is that from which there is nothing different whatsoever? How is it that even duality is non-different?
So the world is not different from it, yet it is non-dual. What is she talking about? I think you can kind of figure it out. Going on.
Suchi Samadhanam, answering the queries of Suchi. Mantryovacha bhavatya paramatmaiva kathito bodharititah anakhyaktvat agamyatvat akashad api sukshmakah brahmanda budbudat tasmin liyante shakti paryayat. The minister said, only the Supreme Self has been described by you by way of instruction. Because of its indescribability and inaccessibility, it is subtler than even the sky. In that Supreme Self, the bubbles of diverse worlds are dissolved by the revolution of energy.
So, guess what? The minister seems to be a man of realization. And he's able to answer her question. She was asking about the self. Going on.
Akasham bahyashunyatvat anakasham cha chitvatah akinchit ityanirdesyam vastu satteti kinchana. It is the sky, since it is void outwardly, and it is not the sky, since it is of the nature of consciousness. It is not anything because it is undefinable. It is something because it is the reality underlying all objects.
Yes. So, beautiful articulation of the paradox that the self is language falls short. Words can only point, they cannot define. Next one.
Chetanosau prakashatma vedya bhavad bhavet shila atmani vyomani svache tagdunmesha chitrakrit. This conscious being of the nature of light may be likened to a stone because of the absence of things to be known. He paints the pictures in the form of the manifestation of the worlds in the clear sky of the self.
Yeah. So, like a stone which is inert, there is nothing in the self. Yet the whole universe is painted. They didn't have holograms in those days. I think that's a better image. But that's the idea. It seems to be there. Seen, but not real. Like the dream. Going on.
Idam tadbhavamatratvat vishvam nasya tatah prithak jagad bhedopi tadbhanam iti bhedopi tanmayah. Since this visible universe is only of the nature of that, the Supreme Self, the universe cannot be different from that. Even the perception of difference in the world is the perception of that. Thus, even difference is identical with that.
So this is a subtle point. Again, it becomes easier if we go to the dream state. In the dream, you've got the dream body. From that dream body, you have a locus of perception. In that dream body, you have an ego identified with it. And you have otherness perceived in the dream. People, places, things, and conditions. Thoughts and feelings inside. But in actuality, the dream body, the dream ego, the dream world, the dream thoughts and feelings are not different from your mind. Remember, you are the God of your dream as an individual. All this comes about in the same way. This world is not different from that. Just like the dream world is not different from your mind. Going on.
Sarvasambadho gatya bhavat na gacchati nastyasau ashraya bhavat sadrupatvat athasti cha, all pervading and related to everything as their substratum. He does not move because of the absence of position. That is, there is no motion for one who is not subject to spatial coordinates. He does not exist due to the non-existence of a resting place or a thing on which he depends. Even so, he exists. He is of the nature of being.
Yes. So it is the eternal substratum as consciousness for everything. It is sthita, still, established. The name and form pass by in front of my consciousness. But I am a still point. I don't exist as a thing. I'll never be able to say I've had an experience of the self. Yet it's always known, always experienced. It's me. It's myself. It's not remote. It's right here. Going on.
Raja uvacha yatsankocha vikasabhyam jagat pralaya srishtayah nishtha vedanta vakyanam atha vachamagocharaha sanmatram tattvaya bhadre kathyate brahma shashvatam. Blessed Lady, that eternal Brahman, which is of the
And
nature
King
of...
is saying this now.
Oh yeah, sorry. The king said, Blessed Lady, that eternal Brahman, which is of the nature of pure being, by whose contraction and expansion the dissolution and the creation of the worlds happen, which is the end of all the precepts of Vedanta, the concluding portions of the Vedas or the Upanishads, and yet indescribable by words, is narrated by you.
Yes. So here not only is the minister a man of wisdom, but so is the king. He says, you've described this ultimate truth that's indicated in the most authoritative scriptures, the Vedas, in the Upanishads, in the Vedanta. Going on.
Jim, sorry,
Yes.
one question. What does contraction and expansion refer to?
Read that, how it's used. I'm sorry, I was focused on the.
No, I can read. Blessed Lady, that eternal Brahman, which is of the nature of pure being, by whose contraction and expansion the dissolution and the creation of the worlds happen.
All right. So in the tantric traditions, there's a slight difference between the way in which the universe comes about and the Advaita Vedantins. It's not an important point. It's called spanda, which means vibration or oscillation. So the idea is in the vast expanse of consciousness, in a small corner, consciousness vibrates. Sometimes you'll hear me say the whole world is nothing but vibration held together by thought. Does it really vibrate though? So I wouldn't get hung up on it. So does your mind actually move when you dream? Well, thought certainly flows. It contracts into deep sleep, it expands into the dream. But does it actually really go anywhere? So it's not like Brahman gets little and gets big, but there is movement that appears to happen in Brahman. Whether it's vibration or just illusion, I wouldn't worry about it, frankly. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
It's only attempts to explain the direct experience. Anybody in Zoom land have any thoughts on this? My favorite definition of Maya. It's the word to describe how the impossible seems possible. How is it this Brahman, which is pure consciousness, which is always the eternal subject, one without a second, which is sthita, still, which never moves, apparently has an entire cosmos appear in it. It's impossible, but it appears to happen. That's the great mystery of Maya. Did that help?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Good question. Good question. Going on.
Rakshasya uvacha aho patapavitreyam bhavator bhati shemushi pujaniyo yuvam nunam karthyatam me tvadihitam. The demoness said, "Indeed, your intellect is pure and holy. Certainly you too are fit to be worshipped. The thing desired by you may please be communicated to me."
So she says, not only are you not going to be lunch, but you are men of wisdom. You are worthy to be honored, to be worshipped. Not only will I not eat you, but I'm a demon. I've got powers. I'm going to grant you boon. Go ahead. Ask away. Be careful of when you let people do that. I'll give you anything you want. Just ask. Let's see what the king and the minister ask of her. Going on.
Rajovacha bhuyo bhavatyana pranaha himsaniya kadachana. The king said, "Never again should lives or living beings be afflicted or killed by you."
So he said, quit eating people. You probably shouldn't even eat cows. No hamburger. No human burgers. No. Now there's a problem here. You can't feed steak to a cow, and you can't feed grass to a tiger. Doesn't work. That's not the food that's appropriate to that being. Now, the deeper meaning here is we do not leave our Swadharma. If you think self-realization is going to make you a different person, maybe, maybe not. For example, many people said that if Swamiji hadn't gone into the spiritual life, he probably would have been Prime Minister of India. He was a man who loved to deal with power. He was a charismatic public speaker. He absolutely wanted to make a difference and change India. He used to say, now that India is free, we need to make Indians free. That's why he was teaching the Vedanta. His guru had a different swadharma. He stayed up in the Himalayas. He would never come down to the lowlands, even when he had dysentery. His students said, let us, get you treated in Delhi. He wouldn't do it. It may be your nature to be an activist. Can't help it. You just got to fight for justice. Someone else may be completely drawn to deep philosophical thinking. I was talking with a student last night at Gita, and she said, I just like to start stuff. She has an entrepreneurial swadharma. So that probably won't change because of your engagement in the spiritual life. And everything changes because all of our motivations are different. We're no longer driven by ambition, by greed, by trying to live up to some internalized notion of perfection or the voice of a parent. All that's gone. But your equipment will continue to act in the world according to its prarabdha karma, the force of its past, its swadharma, your own individual nature. And for Karkati here, she has not left her swadharma. So the king says, stop it, quit eating people. Probably even should be a vegetarian. So let's see how she responds. Going on.
Rakshasya uvacha asharira parityagam itah prabhritino maya himsaniya paraprana pashyantya sarvagam shivam. From now onwards, until giving up the body, others' lives should not be afflicted by me, who am seeing the all-pervading Shiva, the Supreme Spirit.
So she says, okay, I am essentially a sannyasi inside. Since it's been asked of me, I will give up eating people. But that means I'm going to give up eating altogether. Doesn't matter. So, the mark of the person of steady wisdom is they're willing to do anything for the rest of eternity, and they're willing to do without anything for the rest of eternity. All depending on what circumstances demand. I think of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who was a very young man, an incarnation of a High Lama in Tibet. And during the invasion of the Chinese, he took a whole community of people across the Himalayas into India in the middle of winter. So there he is, a refugee in Tibet with none of the structures around him of being a High Lama. He didn't have a monastery, didn't have any of the texts or any of that kind of stuff. So he goes off to England and studies English at Oxford, runs around in a black suit with a black tie and a white shirt, but he still did not leave his Swadharma. He was still Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And in time, that Swadharma asserted itself around him. He was just being who he was. Any thoughts on this? When he was required to leave his life as a monk in Tibet, he did it. So we do not know what the Lord will ask of us. But if we're yogis, we accept. And don't worry. Your prarabdha karma will take care of it all. Just take care of today. All the rest will fall into place. Going on, next one.
Ratim dharanam badhva kshuddham na ganayamyaham, holding it in memory until death. I do or shall not mind. I do not mind my hunger.
So she will just immerse herself in Brahman, and she's going to be hungry. And she'll just go ahead and starve to death, because that's what the king asked of her. And she made a promise, a vow. She's going to keep her word. Going on.
Raja uvacha agacha smadgriham bhadre divyastri rupadharini. The king said, "Blessed lady, come to our house, assuming the form of a beautiful woman."
So the king says, wait a minute, I can't have this. I can't let this enlightened Rakshasi die. So here's my game plan. You come to my palace and transform yourself, because she does have powers, into a beautiful woman. Now let's see what happens. Going on.
Tato dushkriti nashchoran vadhyan shatasahasrashah mandalebhya samahritya dasyami tava bhojanam. Then I shall give as your food wicked persons, thieves, and those fit to be killed by hundreds of thousands, collecting them from the multitudes.
So what is the king's Swadharma? His job is to maintain justice in the kingdom. So what's he got to do? Reward the good people and deal with the criminals, the bent people, the rapists, the murderers, those people. He puts them in prison, and he collects them for a year. And to cut down on the cost of maintaining jails, he's got a solution. At the end of the year, he gives them to Karkati to eat. That's the solution. Going on.
कान्तारूपं परित्यज्य गृहीत्वा तानशेषतः गत्वा च हिमवच्छृङ्गं तत्र भुङ्क्ष्व यथा सुखम्. Abandoning the form of a lovely woman, seizing them in entirety and going to the summit of the Himalaya mountain, eat them there at pleasure.
So she transforms herself back to her original form as the big fat Rakshasi, gathers up all the criminals, takes them up on top of the mountain. Chomp, 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 chomp. Hoping for a high crime rate this year. So that's what she does. Going on.
तृप्तिं निद्रां ततो लब्ध्वा भवभूय समाधिभाक् समाधि विरता भूयः एवमेव समाचर. Then, having obtained satisfaction and sleep, resort to samadhi, yogic absorption in the self again. Having ended the samadhi, do again in this manner.
So when she's had eaten all these criminals and she's sated, she sleeps for a bit. Then she goes into samadhi. And at the end of her period of samadhi, she again transforms herself back into the lovely lady, comes back to the palace. She walks in and they say, "Oh, where have you been for the past 3 months? You look so good. Did you go on a vacation? Did you have a cruise? You just look so rested." They have no idea that she's been up on the mountain eating criminals. Going on.
ततः प्रभृति साद्यापि किरात जनमण्डले तद्ध्यान आगत्य गृह्णाति समाधे व्युत्थिता सती. From then on, even today, that ascetic woman, having risen from samadhi and coming to the region of savage tribes, seizes those fit to be killed.
So, even though she is a woman of the highest realization, she does not leave her prakriti, her nature, her swadharma, the way in which she's been designed to live. So the deep point is, what are you doing in your life right now? It's okay. You do not need to become a swami or a swamini in order to be a person of wisdom. You don't have to be a celibate. You don't have to be a teacher. And in fact, if that's not your swadharma, if you crave that as some ego state, I want to be like the saints. All you'll do is suffer. What do I do with my life? Ride the horse in the direction it's going. Don't try to swim the river upstream. Let it take you. And as you go through your allotment of gains and losses, joys and sorrows, successes and failures, stay detached. All we ever get in life is the work. The outcome, who knows? Any thoughts on this point?
Don't we need some level of passion and desire just to function?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question, Justin.
I said, don't we need some level of passion and desire just to be able to swim with the river of life, going in the direction or riding the horse?
Listen very carefully now.
Yeah.
In the end, desire and passion are not an impediment to realization.
Okay.
Listen carefully. Listen very carefully. There is desire that's craving, that is rooted in the idea that my happiness is dependent on this particular passion or desire or something like that. That's different than the kind of passion or desire that arises out of creativity, expression, inspiration.
The love of others.
Whatever, if it
Yeah.
comes out of the same places like a child's desire to play.
Okay.
My new passion, I love watching YouTube videos of baby elephants playing in the mud. It is the most joyous thing to watch, how baby elephants love to play in mud. They just splash around and flop over on their sides, and their trunks make lots of noise and stuff like that. And the big elephants are watching it all. They'll do this for hours. It accomplishes nothing. It's just fun. That's how we're designed to live. That's how we're designed to live. Now, if you cannot do what you love because of your particular karmic situations, then we endeavor to learn to love what we do. You may be a stock boy at Walgreens, but can you find a way to find joy in that? But that's very different than those people whose life is so serious. I've got to have ambition. I've got to be driven. I've got to accomplish this. I have these goals for life. I have a 5-year plan for life. This is my business plan for life. You can set goals. But those of you who've had some success in the world, I think you'll find, okay, getting what you want just gets you what you want. Now what? That's not the answer. But having a 5-syllable unpronounceable name and running around in orange isn't the answer either. If you're led to that, great. If that's what you want to do. Does that make it a little clearer, Justin?
Yes.
Any other thoughts or questions about this? Very important point. And to me, why I love this gal, for those of us who are basically hedonists, in the end, we're still hedonists. It's just that we see that the world is too little. Why try to wring a little bit of juice out of the paltry things of this world? Karkati, there she is, for thousands of years, millions of people she eats, and still not enough. This world is never enough. You need something infinite. Good news is that yourself. All right, going on.
इति श्री वासिष्ठ संग्रहे सूच्योपाख्यानम नाम पंचम सर्गः. Thus ends the 5th chapter, titled The Story of Suchi, in the abridgment of Yoga Vasishta.
Okay, and actually, there is a temple dedicated to, later, they decided to make her a goddess. So there is a temple up within, just one, in the Himalayas, in the region that it talks about in the story, where people actually are devoted to Karkati as a divinity in that area. But I just love it. This is absolutely one of my favorite stories in the whole book. Okay, I think now we start the story of Aindava. Going on.
Shashta Sargah Bhavana Vaibhavam. Chapter 6, The Power of Thought. Aindavopakhyanam, the story of Aindava. Vasishta Uvacha idam Aindavamakhyanam Shrunurama Shubhavaham Chitishakti Samullasam Nishchannoshi Jagatyatah. Vasishtha said, Rama, hear this story of Aindava, conducive to good, from which you determine the world as the great play of the power of the thinking mind.
So what is this world? Again, the major idea that this text wants to give us is the mind is the world and the world is the mind. It's not solid, it's not separate, it's not out there. It is like a dream. Some yogis just stand back and watch. Other yogis take the viewpoint, it may be a dream, but it doesn't have to be a nightmare, and do to a limited degree some dream shaping. We have examples of both in the tradition. But now we're going to learn about Aindava. I think Indu is the moon, isn't it? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. So Aindava is children of the moon, or the child of the moon. Going on.
Praja Strashtum Drishau Sphare Vyomni Yojitavan Ajah Tatraso Drishtavan sargan prithak bhutan anekashah. The unborn creator fixed his sight on the expansive sky to create mankind. There he saw the world separated in large numbers.
So the unborn, Brahma, the creator, fixed his sight in the space of consciousness. This comes so close to quantum physics. The act of knowing, of seeing, of observing concretizes stuff. I love the saying that Swami Tejo Mayananda used to say all the time. Do you know how to get rid of your worries? Quit worrying. I think the circumstances create my worrying, and it's the other way around. My worrying makes me see the world as worrisome.
I completely agree.
There was a young man here, and he was going on and on and on and on about you should be afraid of this, and you can't trust these people, and how do you know this is true, and blah 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 blah. And I just said, stop. I don't live in your world. You live in a world of fear. I live in God's universe. I live and move and have my being in God. It is a beneficent universe that conspires for my well-being if I let it. Let go and let God have his wonderful way. Why? Because the world and the mind, same thing. You choose. Going on.
Suryam tasmat jagajjalat ekamaniya prishtavan kastvam kathamidam jatam jagajjalam vadanagha. Having brought the sun from that web of the worlds, he asked, who are you? How was this web of the worlds born? Tell that, sinless one.
So he asks the sun, Surya, how this Jagat Jalam, the web of the world, and the idea, it's like a spider. Where does the spider get the stuff to make the web? Comes out of its own body. So that's the image, that consciousness is like the spider, and out of it comes the web of this world. Now, the other thing that's really cool about this image, what is the web used for by the spider? Trap the food, the bugs. Yeah. So what happens to individual egocentric people in the web of the world when I am covered in my mind by ignorance and live seeing and believing that people, places, things, and conditions can make me happy or sad? Those things are sticky. Just like the spider's web. We call that attachment. It's a beautiful, beautiful image. So this is a literary device. He says to the sun, Surya, where's the source of it? Now, this is Brahma, the creator, talking. You think he'd know, but in this story, he doesn't. Might be a rhetorical question. We don't know. Going on.
इत्युक्तो भास्करः प्राह जम्बुद्वीपै ककोणके इन्दुनाम तिशान्तात्मा कश्यपस्य कुलोद्भवः. Thus told the sunset, in one corner of Jambudvipa, there was a person with a very tranquil mind by name Indu, who was born in the family of Kashyapa.
So the sun is going to explain the origin of the world by means of a story. Once upon a time, there was this dude named Indu. Let's see what happens.
Tasya pranasama bharya na babhuvatmajastayoh te pattustau tapo ghoram putrartham pritanishtitau. He had a wife equal to his life. No son was born to them. They performed severe penance for the sake of a son, adhering to religious vows.
So they are unable to have children, and they've gotten beyond the childbearing age. So what do? They do tapas. Always happens. You do tapas, and if you do enough tapas, you get a boon. That's a literary device. Going on.
Sorry, you do enough tapas, you get a what?
You get a boon. You get a gift.
Okay, I didn't know what
It's a classic literary device in these Indian stories that if you do charities, that pleases the god, and the god says, I will give you a wish.
Okay.
It would be comparable to in Western mythological stories. You find the bottle, you find the lamp, and you rub it, and out comes the genie who gives you 3 wishes.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
So what we want to make sure is the goal of life is not about learning to do tapas to get what you want. This is a literary device to move the story.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Okay?
Yes, thanks.
All right. Anybody else have questions about that? Going on.
Varam vipra grihaneti tushta provacha shankarah dashaputran yayachesa tathaiva chaptavan varam. Brahmana, take this boon. Thus said Shankara. Shiva, who was pleased, he begged for 10 sons and got the boon likewise.
So he's not satisfying with just one kid. Mind you, the wife didn't seem to have any say in this matter. So he said, I want 10 sons. So poor Mrs. Indu has to have 10 babies. So they do. Going on.
Jataste kramasho balaha kalena praudi mayayuhu vrutau cha pitarau drishtva griham samtyajya khedinah. In due course, those children were born. With the passage of time, they attained maturity. Having seen their parents dead and having abandoned their house, they became dejected in spirits.
So, as happens with people in the ordinary course of events, the children grow up, the parents grow old, and then the inevitability happens. The parents die. And these kids grieve. They're sad for the loss of their parents, as most of us are. Going on.
Kimiha syat param shreyah iti sanchintya sodaran jyeshtha provacha brahmatvam akalpanta vinashiyat tadeva rochate mahyam brahma hamiti chetasa srijami samharamiti dhyanamastu chirayavah. What may be the supreme good here? Thus reflecting, the eldest of them told his brothers, only the state of Brahma, the creator which is indestructible till the end of the universe, is liked by me. With the consciousness, I am Brahma, the creator, let you have the contemplation I create and withdraw for a long time.
So he says, what sucks about this life is everybody dies. So what I want is corporeal immortality. I want to be immortal. So I want to be of the form of the creator God. So let's do tapas and meditate on being Brahma. Now, for those of us Westerners, we need to make this distinction. Just remember, Brahma, masculine noun, is comparable to Ishvara, the Lord, the creator God. Brahman, neuter noun, is what we identify as the ground of being, consciousness itself. So there is a distinction here. So here they aren't meditating on being Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. They are wanting to be the creator God with a form who creates universes and withdraws them. An immortal, powerful being. So the eldest one says, let's all do this. So they actually end up creating 10 universes. Going on.
Athate brahmana evam baddha brahmatma bhavana tesham dehastu kalena galita shirna parnavat. Then those brahmanas were firmly rooted in the thought of their being Brahma, the creator. Their bodies in course of time dropped off like withered leaves.
So they meditate, I am the creator God, I am the creator God. And in time, their physical bodies drop away. Let's see what happens. Going on.
Bhavana paripakena dashate brahmatam gatah satesham dashadha sarga pratibhaso yamuthitah eshamanyatamasyaham bhaskarosmi pitamaha. By the ripening of their thought, those 10 attain to the state of Brahma, the creator. This appearance of the worlds arose in 10 ways for them. Grandsire, the one among the many, I am Bhaskara, the sun.
So each one got to create his own universe. And maybe they were different. So the idea here is by Sankalpa, we create our worlds. So there's 3 of us here in the living room. Puneet, Soundarya, and Jim. Are we all seeing the same world? Even though we may think we're all perceiving the same world. How we perceive it, our experience of it, is the result of our sankalpa. So these 10 sons of Indu create 10 universes. All right, it's 9 o'clock. We'll stop there. What verse are we on for next week?
Verses 12 and 13, page 55.
All right. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.